The Alpha
We
King
cannot
ruled the
delay. The
strongest
shadows
pack in the
approach.
I know,
north.
but they are so small.
Nothing
I
in
will
his
shield
kingdom
them with
feared
my
him,
life.
except his own
Hush
sons.
now, little one.
For weeks, the royal palace
It's all
echoed
right.
with the cries of two newborn heirs.
Hush now, little one.
They
You're
screamed
safe.
day and night.
I've got you.
Nurses tried.
Please be still.
Healers tried. Even the king himself tried. Nothing worked. The twins rejected every scent, every touch,
We
every
cannot delay.
voice.
The shadows approach.
Some
They are
servants
so
whispered the
small.
I
pups
will
were
shield them with
cursed.
my life.
Others said the queen's betrayal had broken them because their mother had vanished.
We must
She
hurry.
left the
The
Alpha
shadows
King.
gather.
The babes
She
are
left the
restless.
throne. She left the twins behind.
Hush now, my
But no one
princess, you are
expected the
safe.
one person
By
who
the
could
moon,
calm
how can they
them.
be so calm?
Not a
miracle
royal
or a
healer.
curse?
Stop this
Not a
fighting at
powerful
once!
wolf.
Please, they're just
A
children.
servant girl.
I command you to lay down
An
your...
Omega Maid the
Hush now,
entire
little one,
palace
you're
mocked.
safe.
A girl with no
I've
wolf.
got you.
And the moment she
Please
touched
be
the crying
still.
prince, the impossible
Hush now,
happened.
little one.
The screaming
There,
stopped.
it's all right.
Before the story continues, may take a second to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy stories like this. More werewolf drama and powerful alpha stories are coming soon. Chapter 1. The Crying That Haunted the
Hush now, little
Palace.
one.
For nearly a
It's
month,
all right.
the royal palace had not known peace. Every hallway carried the same sound. Two newborn princes crying without rest. Their voices were small, yet they filled the entire fortress like a storm trapped inside stone walls. Servants whispered about it while sweeping the corridors. The kitchen workers heard it even from the lowest level of the castle. The guards outside the royal wing said the same thing every morning. The twins had not slept.
We cannot
Neither
delay.
had
The
anyone
shadows
else.
approach.
I know, but
Nurses
they're so
tried
small.
I will
everything.
shield them with
They
my
rocked
life.
the babies for hours. They sang lullabies passed down through generations of wolves. And they brought the best wet nurses from every nearby pack. Still, the crying continued. Even the royal healer could not explain it. He examined the babies carefully. Healthy hearts, healthy lungs, strong wolf blood. Nothing appeared wrong. Yet the moment anyone tried to comfort them, the screaming returned. Some servants believed the princes were cursed. Others whispered something darker. The queen had abandoned them. And maybe newborn wolves could feel betrayal. 4 weeks earlier, Queen Isabella vanished from the palace during the night. No goodbye, no explanation, no message. She simply disappeared. And she left behind her newborn sons. The Alpha King never spoke about it. But his anger filled the palace like smoke. Meanwhile, far below the royal nursery, inside the loud and crowded palace kitchen, Emma Carter scrubbed dishes, and her hands moved through greasy water that smelled like burnt meat and old fat. Steam rose around her face. Metal plates clattered beside the sink as other servants dumped their work onto her station. Emma kept her head down. She always did. A servant dropped another tray beside her. The impact splashed dirty water across her apron. Grease ran down the cloth. The boy laughed. Careful, Wolfless. Emma wiped her sleeve quietly. She did not answer. Responding always made things worse. Everyone in the palace knew something about Emma. She had no wolf, among shifters that made her an outsider. Every child born into the pack felt their wolf spirit growing inside them. Every child except Emma. She was different, weak, or so everyone believed. Another servant near the bread table leaned closer to his friend. Hear them again. The crying. Emma paused. Even through the kitchen noise she heard it. Faint. High above the stone ceilings. Two babies screaming. The sound made something twist inside her chest. They sound scared. She whispered the words before she realized it. The servant beside her snorted. They sound annoying. Emma looked down at the dishwater again, but the crying continued echoing faintly through the kitchen, and Emma could not stop listening. Emma had lived inside the palace for 7 years. Most servants barely noticed her. She cleaned floors, carried buckets, scrubbed dishes until her fingers turned red from the soap. Her sleeping space was a narrow storage closet beside the kitchen. A thin mattress rested on the floor. One blanket hung from a hook. Yet Emma never complained, because in her mind she believed something important. The Alpha King once saved her. She remembered that day clearly. She had been 6 years old, lost inside the palace gardens. The royal grounds were enormous, tall hedges, flower fields, stone fountains. Emma wandered too far from the servants' wing and could not find the way back. When the sun began setting, she started crying beneath a large oak tree. That was when a shadow appeared beside her. A tall man wearing dark hunting clothes, golden hair, sharp eyes, Alpha King Alexander. Emma froze with fear. But instead of anger, the king crouched beside her. His voice sounded calm. "What is a little one doing out here alone?" Emma could barely speak through her tears. "I cannot find the kitchen." The king studied her quietly. Then he lifted her easily into his arms. "You should not wander alone in a place this large." He carried her across the gardens toward the servants' wing. Every worker who saw him froze in shock. The cooks bowed quickly when he entered the kitchen. Yet the king did not seem angry. He simply placed Emma on the floor. "Find the girl some work. Let her stay here." The cooks nodded nervously. From that moment, Emma belonged to the palace. She always believed that meant something. The king had shown kindness, even if no one else did. Years passed. Emma worked harder than anyone. Still, the servants treated her like something invisible. Because the truth never changed. Emma Carter had no wolf. And in a world of werewolves, that meant she had no place. Chapter 2. The day the crying grew worse. One morning, the kitchen felt unusually tense. Servants moved quickly between the tables. The head cook shouted orders across the room. Emma stood beside the dish basin, washing another stack of plates. Suddenly, the kitchen doors burst open. A woman rushed inside wearing a nurse uniform. Her hair looked messy. Her eyes were swollen from exhaustion. "Please," she gasped while leaning against the table. "Does anyone here know how to calm babies?" The kitchen workers stared. The cook frowned. "What happened now?" The nurse rubbed her face. "The princes will not stop crying. 3 weeks now. 3 weeks and nothing works." Emma felt her stomach tighten. The nurse continued speaking. "The king has barely slept. The palace healers are running out of ideas." The cook handed her a cup of water. "Sit before you collapse." But the nurse shook her head. "No time." They started screaming again. Emma heard it too, even louder than before. The sound carried faintly down the hall, 2 babies crying until their tiny voices sounded hoarse. Emma stepped forward without thinking. "I can help carry supplies." The nurse blinked in surprise. "You?" Emma nodded. "I can hold blankets, bring water, anything you need." The nurse hesitated, then sighed. "Fine, just hurry." Emma wiped her hands and followed her through the hallway. They climbed 2 flights of stairs, then another. The crying grew louder with each step. By the time they reached the royal nursery door, the sound filled the entire corridor. Emma felt her chest ache. Inside the room, chaos waited. 2 cribs stood near the center. Inside them, 2 babies screamed with all their strength. 3 nurses moved around them in panic. One tried rocking a prince in her arms. Another tried feeding the second. Nothing worked. Emma stepped closer slowly. The sound of their crying felt painful. She looked down into the nearest crib. One of the twins lay there trembling, his face red from exhaustion, his small fists clenched. Emma felt something inside her chest pull tight. Without thinking, she reached forward. Her finger touched the baby's chest. The prince froze instantly. His crying stopped. The entire room fell silent. The baby opened his eyes slowly. Dark, curious eyes stared straight at Emma. Then his tiny hand grabbed her finger. Behind her, the second twin stopped crying too. The room went completely still. One nurse whispered in disbelief, "What just happened?" Emma did not know the answer, but something inside the nursery had changed forever. For several seconds, no one in the nursery moved. 3 exhausted nurses stood frozen beside the cribs. Emma slowly pulled her hand back, afraid she had done something wrong. But the prince did not start crying again. Instead, he stared at her. His small fingers tightened around hers as if he did not want her to leave. The second twin made a soft sound. Not crying. Something closer to curiosity. Emma turned slightly and looked into the second crib. The baby had rolled onto his side. His eyes were open now, watching her. The nurse holding him looked confused. He stopped crying. The other nurse stepped closer. 4 weeks, she whispered. 4 weeks and they never stopped. Emma felt nervous under their staring. Maybe he was just tired, but the prince in the crib began reaching for her, his tiny hands stretched forward. Emma hesitated. The nurse carefully lifted him from the crib. "He is asking for you." Emma quickly shook her head. "I am only a kitchen servant." But the nurse had already placed the baby into Emma's arms. The moment the prince touched her chest, his body relaxed. His small head rested beneath her chin. Within seconds, his breathing slowed. He fell asleep. The second twin immediately began whining. He pushed against the crib bars. His tiny fingers opened and closed toward Emma. He wanted her too. Emma felt panic. "I cannot hold both." But the nurse gently placed the second baby into her other arm. The second prince pressed against her shoulder. His crying stopped instantly. Silence spread through the nursery. For the first time in nearly a month, the room felt peaceful. One of the nurses sat down slowly in a nearby chair. "I cannot believe this." Emma looked down at the 2 sleeping babies. Their faces were calm. Warm breaths brushed against her neck. The head nurse studied Emma carefully. "What is your name?" "Emma Carter." The nurse nodded slowly. "Emma Carter, remember this moment, because the princes have chosen you." Emma did not understand those words yet, but the peaceful silence in the nursery felt almost magical. And that moment marked the beginning of a secret that would soon shake the entire kingdom. The next morning, Emma returned to the nursery. She almost felt nervous walking through the royal corridor. A servant like her did not belong near the royal wing, but the nurse had asked for her. So she came quietly. When Emma pushed the nursery door open, something surprising happened. 2 small heads popped up from inside the crib. The twins saw her immediately. Their eyes lit up. Both babies began making excited sounds, not crying, laughing. Emma rushed forward. "Good morning," she whispered softly. The twins bounced in their crib. One grabbed the wooden rail and tried to climb it. The other reached both arms toward her. Emma lifted them carefully. The moment she held them, their excitement calmed. They relaxed against her chest like they had been waiting all night. One nurse leaned against the wall watching. "It is always like that," she said quietly. "They wake up the moment they smell you." Emma felt confused. "Why me?" The nurse shook her head. "None of us understand it." Emma sat on the soft rug beside the crib. The twins crawled across her lap happily. They tugged at her sleeves. One pulled her hair. The other laughed when she made a quiet humming sound. Time passed quickly in the nursery. Soon the babies grew sleepy again. Emma gently rocked them until they drifted off. Watching them sleep made her chest feel warm. No one had ever needed her before. But these 2 small princes did. Still, the head nurse watched Emma with concern. "The king will return soon," she finally said. Emma looked up. "Return?" The nurse nodded. "He has been leading soldiers at the northern border. When he comes back, he will visit the nursery." Emma felt a small chill. Why did that thought suddenly make her nervous? Chapter 3. The King Returns. 3 weeks passed. Emma continued visiting the nursery secretly. Each day, the same miracle repeated. The twins refused everyone else. But the moment Emma entered the room, they laughed. The nurses stopped questioning it. They simply allowed her to care for them. Soon the babies recognized her voice. When Emma sang softly, they clapped their hands. They crawled after her around the nursery floor. The crying that once haunted the palace disappeared. For the first time in weeks, the corridors were quiet, but secrets inside a palace never stayed hidden forever. One morning, loud horns echoed through the main gates. Servants rushed toward the windows. The Alpha King had returned. Emma did not know. She sat on the nursery floor playing with the twins. One baby tugged her sleeve. The other tried chewing on her finger. Emma laughed quietly. "You two are trouble." The nursery doors suddenly burst open. Heavy footsteps filled the room. Emma looked up. Alpha King Alexander stood in the doorway. Tall, powerful. His golden hair fell across his shoulders. Two guards stood behind him. The room froze. Emma quickly stood. "Your Majesty." The twins reacted instantly. They grabbed her clothes. When she stepped away, the babies began crying again. The king stared at the scene. His eyes darkened slowly. "What is this?" The head nurse stepped forward carefully. "Your Majesty, the princes have grown attached to her." The king looked back at Emma. "Attached?" His voice carried disbelief. Emma lowered her gaze. "I only helped calm them." The king walked closer. His presence filled the entire nursery. The twins reached for Emma again. Their cries grew louder. The king watched them carefully. Then his expression hardened. "A servant girl has no place raising royal heirs." His voice echoed across the room. "From this moment forward, she will never enter this nursery again." Emma felt her heart drop. Guards stepped forward. They pulled her gently toward the door. Behind her, the twins screamed. Their cries filled the room again. And the silence that once comforted the palace vanished instantly. The moment Emma left the nursery, the crying returned. At first, it was only loud. Then it became unbearable. The twin princes screamed with such force that their tiny bodies shook. Their cries echoed through the royal wing and down the long stone corridors. Servants froze whenever the sound reached them. Everyone knew what it meant. Emma was gone. And the babies knew it too. Inside the nursery, the nurses tried desperately to calm them. One rocked the first prince in her arms. Another tried feeding the second. Nothing worked. The babies pushed them away. Their cries grew louder. The head nurse wiped sweat from her forehead. "Bring the healer again." A young maid rushed out of the room, but even the healer could not help. The babies refused the bottle. They refused sleep. They refused every scent except one. Meanwhile, Emma returned to the kitchen. Her hands moved through dishwater again, but her mind was somewhere else. The crying reached the kitchen clearly now. A servant near the stove groaned. They started again. Another worker covered his ears. "Those babies are cursed." Emma felt pain tighten in her chest. They were not cursed. They were lonely. She knew it, because the moment she held them, they calmed. But the king had forbidden her from returning. That night, Emma lay awake in her small storage room. The crying echoed faintly through the walls. It never stopped. Hours passed. Emma pressed her hands over her ears. Still, she could hear them. Two tiny voices crying until their strength faded. Finally, she sat up. Her heart raced. Just for a moment, she whispered to herself, "Just until they fall asleep." Emma slipped quietly into the dark corridor. The palace slept. Torches burned low along the hallway walls. Emma moved through the servant passages carefully. Every step felt dangerous. If the guards caught her, the punishment would be severe. But the crying pulled her forward. By the time she reached the royal wing, the sound felt weaker. The babies had cried themselves nearly silent. Emma pushed the nursery door open slowly. The room was dim. One lamp burned near the crib. Both princes lay inside. Their faces were red. Their small bodies trembled from exhaustion. No nurse remained inside the room. They had likely collapsed somewhere nearby. Emma hurried to the crib. "Oh, little ones," she whispered softly. The twins opened their eyes. The moment they saw her, they began reaching. Emma lifted them quickly. Their tiny fingers clung to her shirt. Their breathing slowed almost immediately. Within seconds, the crying stopped. Emma sat in the rocking chair. The babies pressed against her neck. Their bodies relaxed. Soon both fell asleep. Emma closed her eyes briefly. Peace returned to the nursery once again. But suddenly, slow clapping echoed across the room. Emma froze. The nursery doors stood open. Alpha King Alexander leaned against the frame. 2 guards stood behind him. His eyes held no warmth. "I warned you." Emma stood quickly. Fear spread through her chest. "Your Majesty, please. I only wanted to calm them." The twins stirred in her arms. The king's voice turned cold. "You disobeyed a direct command." The guard stepped forward. "Take her." They pulled Emma away from the chair. The twins woke instantly. Their screams filled the nursery again. Emma struggled. "Please do not take them." But the guards dragged her toward the door. The king looked at her one final time. "Throw the girl into the dungeon. At dawn, she will be executed for treason." Emma felt the world collapse around her. The twins cried louder as she disappeared into the corridor. And for the second time, the palace fell into chaos. Chapter 4. The dungeon. The dungeon beneath the palace felt cold and damp. The guards pushed Emma inside a narrow cell. Iron bars closed behind her with a loud clang. Emma stumbled backward onto the stone floor. One guard locked the door carefully. "You should not have disobeyed the king," Emma whispered weakly. "I only helped them." The guard said nothing. He walked away down the dark corridor. Silence filled the dungeon. Emma sat on the floor, hugging her knees. Her execution would happen at sunrise. Tears slid down her face quietly. Above the dungeon, she imagined the twins crying again. The thought broke her heart. "I am sorry," she whispered to the empty cell. Hours passed. Then soft sounds echoed through the corridor. Tiny footsteps. Emma lifted her head. 2 small shapes appeared in the torchlight. Wolf pups. Emma stared in shock. The tiny wolves ran toward her cell. Their fur looked dark, their eyes bright. They squeezed their noses through the bars. Emma's breath caught. Vito. Theon. The twin princes had shifted. Something that should have been impossible at their age. They wagged their tails excitedly. Emma reached through the bars and touched their heads. "What are you doing here?" The pups began pawing at something on the floor. A ring of keys. One pup grabbed the metal ring in his teeth. The other pushed it with his paw. Slowly, the keys slid across the stone floor. Closer, closer, until they reached the cell bars. Emma grabbed them with shaking hands. The lock clicked open. The door creaked. Emma fell to her knees, hugging the 2 wolf pups. "You saved me." But far above the dungeon, alarm bells suddenly began ringing across the palace. The alarm bells above the dungeon rang loudly. Emma knew what that meant. The guards had discovered her cell was empty. Search the tunnels. A distant voice shouted somewhere in the corridors. Emma grabbed the 2 wolf pups and rushed out of the cell. The dungeon hallway stretched long and dark ahead of her. Torches flickered along the stone walls. The pups wriggled in her arms. One tried licking her cheek. Emma whispered softly, "We need to leave before the guards return." She moved quickly through the corridor. At the end of the hallway, she found a narrow staircase. The steps led upward toward the servant kitchens. Emma climbed as fast as her legs allowed. The pups clung to her clothes. Halfway up the stairs, she heard footsteps echoing behind her. Guards were coming. Emma pushed forward. Her lungs burned. Finally, she reached the kitchen door. She slipped inside quietly. The room looked empty, but a familiar voice spoke from the corner. "Emma." Emma turned in shock. Mrs. Harper stood beside the wooden table. The older cook stared at the wolf pups in Emma's arms. Her eyes widened instantly. Those are the princes. Emma's voice trembled. Please. I did not mean to break the law. Mrs. Harper walked closer slowly. The pup sniffed her hand curiously. Then she sighed. You saved those babies. I heard the crying every night. Emma lowered her head. The king ordered my death. Mrs. Harper grabbed a cloth bag from the table. Then you must leave now. She began stuffing bread and dried meat inside. Emma looked confused. Leave? The cook pulled a rug from the floor. A wooden trap door appeared beneath it. Secret tunnel. It leads outside the palace walls. Emma stared in disbelief. The bells continued ringing above them. Guards shouted somewhere in the corridors. Mrs. Harper pushed the bag into Emma's hands. Go north. Stay in the forest. Emma's voice shook. Why are you helping me? The cook looked down at the pups. Because those babies trust you. That means something. Emma felt tears sting her eyes. Thank you. She opened the trapdoor. A dark tunnel stretched downward. Emma climbed inside. The pups squirmed in her arms. Mrs. Harper closed the hatch above her. Darkness swallowed the tunnel. Emma began walking. Every step took her farther from the only home she had ever known. Chapter 5. The forest and the cold night air hit Emma's face when she finally reached the end of the tunnel. She pushed aside the wooden exit door. The forest stretched in every direction. Tall trees blocked the moonlight. Emma stepped into the shadows. The pups sniffed the air curiously. Behind her, the palace bells continued ringing. Search the grounds. A guard shouted somewhere beyond the walls. Emma turned toward the forest and ran. Branches scratched her arms. Leaves crunched beneath her feet. She held the pups tightly against her chest. Hours passed. Her legs began shaking from exhaustion. The forest grew darker. Then a sound made Emma stop suddenly. A long howl echoed through the trees. Another howl answered. Tracker wolves. Emma's stomach dropped. The king had sent hunters. The pups whimpered softly. Emma crouched behind a fallen tree. Amber eyes appeared between the trees. One wolf, then another. 3 large tracker wolves circled slowly. Their noses sniffed the air. Emma pressed her back against the tree trunk. Fear spread through her chest. The wolves moved closer. Their low growls vibrated through the clearing. The pups whimpered louder. Suddenly, something huge burst through the trees. A massive wolf slammed into one of the trackers. The fight exploded instantly. The giant wolf moved faster than Emma could follow. One tracker crashed against a tree. Another fled into the darkness. Within seconds, the clearing fell silent. The giant wolf stood between Emma and the forest. Moonlight revealed deep scars across its muzzle. Golden eyes locked onto Emma. Fear surged through her. Emma turned and ran. Emma squeezed between 2 large boulders and hid inside a narrow gap. The pups pressed against her chest. Stay quiet, she whispered. Heavy footsteps approached. Then the sound of bones shifting echoed nearby. Emma held her breath. A deep voice spoke calmly. You run fast for a kid. Emma froze. A tall man crouched beside the rocks. Long dark hair hung across his shoulders. A rough beard covered his jaw. His wolf eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight. Emma tightened her hold on the pups. The man raised his hand slightly. Easy. I am not here to hurt you. Emma studied him carefully. You killed those wolves. He shrugged. They were hunting you. The pups peeked from Emma's arms. The man blinked in surprise. Those are royal wolf pups. Emma nodded slowly. I must bring them to their mother. The man's expression changed. The queen? Emma nodded again. She is alive. The man stood quietly for a moment. Then he sighed. Name is Lucas. I used to belong to the king's pack. Emma waited carefully. Lucas looked back toward the forest. That king is a cruel man, Emma whispered. Will you help me reach the queen? Lucas studied her face, then looked at the pups again. Finally, he nodded. Fine. But we must move quickly. The king's hunters will return. Emma stepped out from the rocks slowly. The pups wagged their tiny tails. Lucas turned toward the northern forest. Follow me. Emma took a deep breath and began walking beside him. She did not know it yet, but the journey ahead would change everything. And soon the truth about who she truly was would finally be revealed. Emma walked beside Lucas through the thick forest. Morning light filtered through the tall trees, turning the mist between the branches pale gold. The night had been long. Emma's legs ached from running, and the wolf pups in her arms felt heavier with every mile. Lucas moved ahead of her with quiet confidence. He knew the forest well. His steps avoided the dry twigs and loose stones that might reveal their path. The pups shifted restlessly. One licked Emma's hand. The other tried chewing the strap of the cloth bag Mrs. Harper had given her. Emma smiled weakly. You two never stay still. Lucas glanced back. They trust you. Emma adjusted the pups in her arms. They only want comfort. Lucas slowed his pace so she could walk beside him. Those are not ordinary pups. Emma frowned slightly. What do you mean? Lucas looked at the tiny wolves carefully. Royal blood carries strong instincts when they choose who they trust. Emma looked down at them again. They had trusted her from the first moment, even before anyone else noticed her. Lucas spoke again. How old are you? 13. He raised an eyebrow. And the king tried to execute you. Emma nodded quietly. Lucas shook his head. That man destroys anyone he believes weak. Emma looked ahead at the endless forest. The morning felt peaceful, but she knew danger still followed them. After several hours, Lucas stopped beside a small stream. Drink. Emma knelt and splashed water across her face. The pups jumped down from her arms and began chasing each other beside the stream. They tumbled over stones and rolled in the grass. Emma laughed softly. Lucas watched them. They should not shift that early. Emma looked up. What do you mean? Wolf children normally shift for the first time around 8 or 9 years old. Emma looked at the pups again. They were not even 2 years old. Lucas's expression turned thoughtful. Fear can force strange things to happen. Emma felt a chill run through her. The twins had shifted to save her life. Chapter 7. Hunters in the Forest. By late afternoon, the forest grew quieter. Lucas slowed his steps. Emma noticed the change immediately. What is wrong? Lucas raised one hand for silence. Then he sniffed the air. Hunters. Emma's heart jumped. Already? Lucas nodded. The king will not stop searching. Emma grabbed the pups again. Their ears twitched nervously. Lucas pointed toward a narrow ridge. We climb there. Emma followed him quickly, but the sound reached them before they reached the ridge. Branches snapping. Heavy paws moving through leaves. 3 wolves burst from the trees. Behind them, 2 armored soldiers followed with drawn swords. Lucas stepped forward instantly. Stay behind me. Emma backed away, clutching the pups. Lucas shifted. Bones cracked loudly as his body transformed. A massive dark wolf stood where the man had been. The first tracker lunged. Lucas slammed into it with incredible force. The fight exploded into motion. Fur and claws collided in the dirt. One soldier charged toward Emma. Without thinking, Emma grabbed a burning stick from the old campfire. She swung it toward his face. The man screamed and stumbled backward. Lucas finished the fight quickly. The remaining wolves fled into the trees. Silence returned to the clearing. Then Lucas staggered. He dropped back into human form. Emma rushed toward him. Blood soaked his side. Lucas collapsed to one knee. Emma's voice shook. You are hurt. Lucas pressed one hand against the wound. His face tightened. Poison. Emma felt panic rise. What do we do? Lucas struggled to stand. We keep moving. More hunters will come. Emma placed one of his arms across her shoulders. Then we walked together. Lucas leaned against her as they began moving again. The pups followed closely beside them. By the next morning, the forest finally began thinning. The land opened into wide rocky hills. Lucas walked slowly now. His breathing grew heavier with every step. Emma supported most of his weight. The pups stayed close beside them. Then Emma saw something in the distance. Smoke, dark shapes, tents. An enormous camp filled the valley ahead. Lucas lifted his head weakly. That must be them. Emma's voice trembled. The Queen's army? Lucas nodded. They stumbled toward the camp. At first, no one noticed them. Soldiers sharpened weapons. Others carried water between the tents. Emma finally shouted, "Help!" Several heads turned. People began running toward them. Lucas collapsed completely this time. Emma fell beside him. The pups whimpered loudly. A healer pushed through the crowd. She knelt beside Lucas. Poisoned blade. She called to the others, "Bring the antidote." Emma looked around desperately. "I must see the Queen." One soldier hurried away toward the center of the camp. Moments later, a powerful voice cut through the noise. "What happened here?" The crowd parted. A tall woman stepped forward, dark hair tied behind her head. Sharp, intelligent eyes. Queen Isabella. Her gaze swept across the scene. Then she saw the wolf pups beside Emma. Her breath caught. As she dropped to her knees instantly, "My sons." Tears filled her eyes as she gathered them into her arms. The pups wagged their tails excitedly. The entire camp fell silent. Then the Queen looked up. Her eyes landed on Emma. "Who brought them to me?" Emma stepped forward slowly. "I did." The Queen stared at her face for a long moment. Shock spread across her expression. Her voice trembled slightly. "What is your name?" "Emma Carter." The Queen stepped closer. Her hand slowly lifted toward Emma's cheek. Something in her eyes looked almost frightened. Emma did not understand why, but the Queen suddenly whispered something unexpected. "That cannot be possible. Because you look exactly like me." The valley camp fell quiet. Dozens of soldiers stood frozen as Queen Isabella held the two wolf pups close to her chest. Her hands trembled. And the pups wagged their tails and licked her face happily. They recognized her scent instantly. "My boys," she whispered softly. For weeks she believed she might never see them again. Now they were here, safe, alive. But the Queen's eyes slowly lifted from the pups. They settled on the girl standing in front of her, Emma Carter. Dust covered her clothes. Scratches lined her arms. She looked exhausted. Yet something about her face made the Queen's heart beat faster. Those eyes, that shape of her jaw. The resemblance struck Isabella like lightning. The Queen stood slowly. Her gaze never left Emma. "You said your name is Emma Carter." Emma nodded nervously. "Yes." The Queen stepped closer. "How old are you?" 13. A strange silence fell over the soldiers around them. 13. The same age her daughter would be. On the daughter taken from her the day she was born. Isabella pushed the thought away. It could not be possible. Still her eyes remained locked on Emma's face. "You brought my sons across half the kingdom." Emma lowered her gaze slightly. They needed their mother. Emotion flashed across the Queen's face. For a moment she reached forward. Her fingers almost touched Emma's cheek. Then she pulled her hand back quickly. "There will be time to speak later." She turned toward the healer. "Take the wounded man to my medical tent. Use whatever treatment he needs." The healer nodded. Lucas was carried away on a stretcher. Meanwhile, the Queen looked back at Emma. "You must rest. You have done more than anyone could expect." Emma nodded quietly, but the Queen's eyes still followed her as the soldiers guided her toward the medical tents. Something deep in Isabella's instincts refused to settle, because the girl looked far too familiar. Chapter 8. The wounded wolf speaks. Lucas woke 2 days later. Pain pulsed through his side. The healer stood beside his bed replacing the bandages. You were lucky. The poison almost reached your heart. Lucas groaned slightly. Where is the girl? The healer raised an eyebrow. Emma? Lucas nodded. She saved the princes. The healer smiled faintly. She has been staying near the queen's tent. Lucas pushed himself upright slowly. The queen noticed something strange about her. The healer paused. Everyone noticed something strange. Lucas frowned. What do you mean? The healer lowered her voice. The resemblance. Lucas thought for a moment. Then a memory surfaced. Years ago, the palace had whispered about something. A rumor quickly silenced. The queen once had another child, a daughter. Lucas looked at the healer sharply. What happened to her? The healer hesitated. The king said the child died shortly after birth. Lucas's jaw tightened. The king lies often. The healer nodded slowly. Some servants believed the baby survived. Lucas leaned back against the bed. If that child lived, she would be around 13 now. The healer stared at him, the same age as Emma. Lucas felt a sudden realization crash into him, and the princes trusted her instantly. The healer's eyes widened. Lucas whispered the thought slowly. Because she might be their sister. Chap learns the truth. That evening, Queen Isabella sat inside her command tent studying a map of the northern border. But her attention kept drifting. The image of Emma's face refused to leave her mind. Someone stepped inside. Lucas, you should still be resting. He shook his head. Your Majesty, we need to talk. The Queen looked up. Lucas stepped closer. There is something you should remember. The Queen waited silently. Years ago you had another child. The word struck Isabella like a blade. Her daughter. Lucas continued carefully. The king told everyone she died, but many servants believed otherwise. The queen's hands trembled slightly. What are you saying? Lucas spoke quietly. Emma is 13, the same age your daughter would be. The princes trusted her immediately, because blood recognizes blood. The queen stood abruptly. Her mind raced through memories she had buried for years. Her newborn baby taken away. The king refusing to let her see the child again. The silence surrounding the subject afterward. Isabella whispered one word. Emma. She rushed out of the tent. Emma sat outside the healer tent watching the twin pups chase each other through the grass. They tumbled across the ground happily. For the first time in weeks, they looked carefree. Suddenly, footsteps approached quickly. Emma turned. Queen Isabella stood in front of her, her eyes filled with tears. Emma stood nervously. Your Majesty? The Queen's voice trembled. There is something I must ask you. Emma waited. Do you know anything about your parents? Emma shook her head slowly. I was found in the palace gardens when I was small. The Queen's breath caught. Do you have a wolf? Emma lowered her gaze. No. The Queen stepped closer. Her hand lifted slowly. She gently touched Emma's cheek. Tears rolled down her face. My daughter was born without a wolf. Emma froze. The Queen's voice broke. The king believed she was weak. He ordered her killed. Emma's heart pounded. But I begged for her life. The Queen whispered. He agreed to spare her. But he took her away from me forever. Emma's breathing became uneven. The Queen looked into her eyes. And now you stand in front of me. Alive, Emma whispered. You think I am your daughter? The Queen pulled her into a tight embrace. I know you are. News spread quickly through the camp. The lost princess had been found. Soldiers whispered the story everywhere. Emma Carter, the wolfless servant, the Alpha King's firstborn daughter. Emma stood beside Queen Isabella overlooking the valley. The twin pups sat at her feet. Lucas approached slowly. The army is ready. Emma looked toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond those hills stood the palace, the place where she once scrubbed dishes, and the place where the king ordered her death. Queen Isabella placed a hand on Emma's shoulder. "We will end his rule." Emma nodded slowly, not for the throne, for the truth. The pups barked happily. The army began preparing for battle, and far away inside the palace, Alpha King Alexander had not yet realized the girl he tried to execute had become the greatest threat to his crown. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more powerful werewolf stories like this one, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what stories would you like to what next.